The internet was not prepared for what Candace Owens just set in motion. With a single post, barely a few lines long, she managed to reignite one of the most mysterious and quietly whispered stories surrounding Erika Kirk and her old Romania charity project. And it wasn't even what she said. It was what she implied. 3 simple words: follow the money. That phrase alone sent social media into full-blown detective mode. Candace didn't mention Erika by name. She didn't mention Romania. She didn't mention the nonprofit, but her message was aimed straight at megachurches' foreign missions and secretive financial networks operating under the banner of faith. And to thousands online, the timing was way too perfect to ignore. Within minutes, old clips resurfaced. Archived footage from Erika's Romanian Angels project started trending again. The video of her standing in an orphanage alongside U.S. Marines was suddenly everywhere. Even forgotten Romanian news articles from years ago were being translated and reposted as if they were brand new. And people started asking the same big question all over again. What exactly was happening in Romania back then? Why was a teenager running a military-supported operation overseas? And why did Candace's message feel like a quiet nudge toward a story most people had stopped talking about? Whatever Candace intended, the effect was immediate and explosive. And that's exactly where this story begins. The moment Candace Owens posted those 3 words, follow the money, the internet lit up like someone had just pulled the pin out of a grenade. It didn't matter that she hadn't mentioned Erika Kirk. It didn't matter that she hadn't said the word Romania. She didn't have to. Her audience had been waiting, almost begging, for her to acknowledge the questions, rumors, and half-buried stories surrounding Erika's old Romanian Angels project. And once Candace finally said something even remotely close to the topic, people took off running. At first glance, Candace's post looked like one of her usual commentaries about shady ministries and spiritual leaders who hide their wrongdoings behind faith. But the phrasing, the timing, the tone, everything lined up too perfectly with the online conversations that had already been circling for weeks. People who had been connecting dots, even if very loosely, felt like Candace had just validated their suspicions. They started reposting old threads, digging up archives, and analyzing connections that most people had forgotten years ago. And the very first thing to resurface was Erika Kirk's old Vimeo video. You could almost feel the shift online as people watched it again with new eyes. In the clip, Erika stands inside a Romanian orphanage, smiling, handing out gifts, surrounded by U.S. Marines. The video is warm, emotional, and hopeful, exactly the kind of content a young nonprofit founder would post to show impact. But this time, people weren't watching the kids or the gifts. They were watching the corners, the backgrounds, the uniforms, the credits at the end. Because after Candace's post, people weren't looking for inspiration. They were looking for clues. The freeze frame started immediately. Someone slowed the video down and pointed out the military presence. Someone else zoomed in on the building's signage in the background. Then hundreds noticed the same thing. The final clip thanking Colonel Busher, along with an association connected to that region of Romania. Normally, no one would have cared. But online, in that moment, it became the biggest talking point, and that's when the real storm began. Someone posted a screenshot from a translated Romanian article, an old local piece, discussing alleged misconduct involving adults near an American base. The article mentioned a translator who claimed she had seen unprofessional behavior among certain personnel and tried reporting it. No connection to Erika, no mention of the nonprofit, but there it was, the same last name from the end of Erika's video. People didn't wait for verification. They didn't check whether it was the same person or if the contexts matched. They just reacted. Because when the internet is in detective mode, coincidence becomes fuel, not caution. And so users started revisiting Erika's entire timeline. They noticed she founded her nonprofit at 17. They noticed that within just 2 years, she was already partnering with the U.S. Marine Corps for an international aid mission. People began asking how a teenager managed something that large, something that connected, something that looked so official. Supporters pointed out that passion, faith, and the right support can make huge things possible, even for someone young. Critics, however, insisted that this kind of access doesn't just fall into someone's hands without very powerful people opening very specific doors. And then another detail resurfaced. Erika once said that her mother was involved with Homeland Security and the Department of Defense. At the time, this came across as a proud daughter talking about her upbringing. But after Candace's post, people started looking at it differently. Was there a connection? Was this why the nonprofit expanded so quickly? Was this why Romania was the chosen destination? Again, nothing proven, only speculation amplified by timing and suspicion. Then the question everyone kept repeating: why Romania? Romania is not a typical first destination for a young American nonprofit. Yes, the country has faced economic struggles. Yes, there were orphanage crises generations ago. But the question wasn't about the country's needs, it was about logistics. How did a teenage-led project get connected to a foreign orphanage so quickly? How did it coordinate with the U.S. military? How did it establish itself in a region located close to a NATO-affiliated base near the Black Sea? People online said the coincidences were starting to pile up, and Candace, knowingly or unknowingly, had just poured gasoline on every one of them. Archives kept resurfacing. Someone found an old interview where Erika described starting her nonprofit with nothing but passion and purpose. She talked about wanting to bring hope, connection, and community service into her generation's heart. She sounded young, optimistic, sincere, exactly what you would expect from a set. But now people were dissecting her every phrase, wondering what parts of the story were missing. Someone else reposted the translated Romanian newspaper article, the one detailing how the translator's complaint ended up reaching Romania's top investigative authority for organized crime and serious cases. The translator claimed she reported inappropriate behavior among adults, not minors, but the seriousness of the agency she contacted raised eyebrows online. People asked, if the situation was minor, why go to and if it was major, why did the case seem to fade without any public resolution? Again, none of this had anything to do with Erika. Yet the internet doesn't separate timelines when it's chasing a narrative. It blends them. And then one user posted something that changed the tone of the entire conversation. How did a 19-year-old girl pull off a global-scale project with Marines, foreign facilities, and institutional backing, unless someone much bigger was behind it? That comment alone got tens of thousands of views, because that was the new question everyone was whispering. And this is where Candace's post became dangerous, not because she accused anyone, but because she didn't. When someone like Candace stays vague, she gives the audience permission to fill in the blanks themselves. And people filled in every blank they could find. They started linking unrelated events, reinterpreting old interviews, and drawing lines between names that simply appeared near each other in time. At this point, the original charity video didn't feel like a charity video anymore. It felt like a piece of evidence. People weren't watching Erika handing out gifts. They were watching who stood behind her. They weren't listening to her words. They were scanning the faces of the Marines. They weren't thinking about the kids. They were looking at the base location and the organization listed in the credits. The question had subtly shifted. It wasn't what did Erika do anymore. It was why was she there in the first place? And that shift changed everything. Erika had never been accused of any wrongdoing. She had never been linked to any misconduct. But the mystery surrounding her Romanian project, the speed, the connections, the sudden silence afterward, made the internet believe there was more beneath the surface. Candace Owens didn't reveal anything new. She didn't expose any hidden truth. But she cracked open a door that many people thought had been sealed years ago. And once the door opened, even just a little, social media did what it does best. It pushed it wide open. When Candace's post began circulating, the entire conversation around Erika Kirk's Romania project took on a life of its own. It wasn't just the usual online gossip anymore. It felt like people were collectively reopening a case file that had been gathering digital dust for more than a decade. And strangely enough, the people pushing the hardest weren't political commentators or investigative journalists. It was regular users, scrolling through old archives, connecting screenshots, translating Romanian news clippings, and stitching together fragments of stories. That had never been meant to collide. The Greg Lurie video was one of the first pieces to resurface. In the clip, Erika stands beside the pastor as she presents him with Charlie Kirk's Medal of Freedom. A moment meant to be respectful and emotional. But because Candace had just raised concerns about megachurches and hidden spiritual networks, the video suddenly took on a different meaning for a lot of people. Some said it was innocent. Others said the timing felt too convenient. Either way, it fed directly into the theory that Candace was hinting at a larger pattern of influential leaders operating behind polished religious branding. Shortly after, someone reposted the exact article Candace had linked, the one about a former megachurch pastor facing allegations unrelated to Erika's situation. At first glance, it didn't have any connection to Romania or anything Erika had done. But the theme of the story, faith, influence, accusations, secrecy, matched the tone of Candace's message. And because Candace rarely shares anything without intention, her audience interpreted the article as a clue rather than random commentary. That was all it took. Suddenly, every detail connected to Erika's Romania mission was viewed through the same lens. Maybe nothing was random. Maybe nothing was unexplained. Maybe every piece meant something. And once people reached that mindset, the internet exploded. Users began translating old Romanian videos again, including a clip of a woman discussing her concerns about how foreign charities operated around her community. She never said Erika's name. She never mentioned Romanian angels. She didn't even identify any specific organization, but she talked about how some groups moved children and supplies from place to place without clear structure, leaving locals confused and unsure about what was really going on. She talked about how records didn't always match, how stories changed depending on who you asked, and how the number of orphans sent abroad over the years, whether exaggerated or not, left many Romanians uneasy. None of it was verified. None of it was directed at Erika, but once people had Candace's "follow the money" echoing in their minds, they treated the clip like a missing puzzle piece. And then there was the resurfaced photo of Erika's mother, Lori, standing inside the same Romanian orphanage in 2013, smiling and holding gifts. In any other context, people would see this as a mother supporting her daughter's work. But now, critics said it looked like a family-backed foreign ministry operation with deeper ties than anyone had known. Supporters argued that this was unfair. Parents often help with their children's projects, especially humanitarian ones. But by the time this debate started, nuance had long left the room. More and more users dug through public filings from Erika's nonprofit. They pointed out that the financial summaries didn't go into detail about the Romania mission, something that's common for small nonprofits. But online it fueled suspicion. People started asking how funds were raised, how the Marine Corps partnership began, how travel was arranged, and who originally connected Erika's team to that specific orphanage. These weren't accusations, they were gaps. And the internet hates gaps. Threads multiplied quickly. Someone mentioned rumors of unusual military rotations in Romania during the same years Erika's project was active. Another person claimed that certain foreign missions in the area seemed to arrive suddenly and leave suddenly without clear explanation. Someone else referenced an old Romanian article mentioning the regional base's strategic importance, which fed directly into theories that Erika's project couldn't have operated there without high-level approval. Each post added just enough uncertainty to keep the conversation going. Candace, meanwhile, stayed silent after her initial message. She didn't clarify what she meant. She didn't deny the speculation. She didn't tell people to stop making assumptions. And for her audience, silence always feels intentional. Then came another element, that translator, Anna Maria. Users recirculated the article describing how she filed a complaint with how she claimed certain adults on the base had behaved inappropriately, and how she believed her reports were not properly addressed once jurisdiction shifted under the US-Romania agreement. Again, she never accused Erika. She never mentioned the nonprofit, but the muted end to her allegations made people wonder if other stories were similarly lost, forgotten, or never fully told. And social media being what it is, people started assuming the worst simply because no one had provided definitive answers. Next, the Romania connection itself became an entire topic of debate. Why was Romania, a country not exactly on the radar for young American nonprofit founders, the destination of choice? Why was the project located so close to a NATO-affiliated airbase? Why did the partnership include Marines instead of typical humanitarian volunteers? Why did it scale up so quickly, then disappear quietly? Supporters said Romania has deep humanitarian needs and that any help is welcome. Critics said the location seemed too specific, too strategic, too connected. The more people talked, the more the story shifted from Erika's intentions to the environment surrounding the mission. Critics focused on unexplained coincidences, while supporters pointed to the lack of any evidence linking her to wrongdoing. But the truth didn't matter. The conversation had already escaped the boundaries of facts and entered the terrain of patterns, vibes, and unresolved narratives. Exactly the kind of space where social media thrives. And then, one user wrote a comment that went viral across multiple platforms. When powerful people don't answer questions, the questions only grow bigger. That comment perfectly represented the public mood. People didn't necessarily believe Erika had done anything wrong, but they did believe that the story felt unfinished, that too many loose ends remained untied, too many details unexplained, too many memories buried. The silence from Erika, the silence from institutions, and the silence from Candace all merged into a single loud message for the audience. Something about this story is still open-ended, and the more open-ended it felt, the more the internet wanted to dig. As the online conversation intensified, it became clear that the story was no longer just about Erika Kirk's past charity work. The entire situation had turned into a massive digital investigation powered by curiosity, speculation, and the strange sense that people had overlooked something years ago. Users weren't just sharing old articles anymore. They were dissecting them line by line, comparing timestamps, matching names, and trying to understand why the Romania story felt so heavy even after so many years. And that heaviness grew even more once an old clip involving a Romanian translator resurfaced. In the translated interview, the woman explained how she had worked near the American base and witnessed what she described as inappropriate behavior by adults stationed there. She emphasized that it involved grown individuals, not children. and that she felt compelled to report it because it didn't align with the standards she expected from people in positions of responsibility. She said she took her concerns to DCAT, Romania's top investigative body for serious crimes. Hearing this, people online immediately treated her claims as part of the larger conversation. She never mentioned Erika. She never referenced the orphanage. She never talked about the Romanian Angels Project. But the fact that concerns existed in the same general region, around the same broad time period, became enough for people to fold her story into the growing narrative. Translated documents showing her filing the complaint also circulated online. People pointed to them and said, "This is why locals have been uneasy for years." Whether her claims had merit or not didn't matter. The internet was focused on how little public information existed about the outcome. Users were especially fixated on the part where jurisdiction reportedly transferred to American authorities under a bilateral agreement, after which no public resolution was ever shared. Bar critics, this felt like a pattern. Significant concerns raised, but no clear follow-up. Supporters argued that many military-related investigations are handled internally, and that silence doesn't automatically mean wrongdoing. But the moment transparency becomes limited, speculation fills the gap. And this case was now overflowing with speculation. Then came another twist. Someone posted a slowdown, zoomed-in version of Erika's Vimeo promo. This time, the video didn't focus on the charity work itself. Instead, it froze at the end, highlighting the credit that thanked Colonel Busher. On its own, it was simply a name. But online, that name had already shown up in translated Romanian news clippings connected to the translator's story. Again, no proof that it was the same individual. No confirmation of any wrongdoing. Nothing officially connecting the two contexts. But for many online detectives, seeing the same name twice, even in unrelated situations, was enough to deepen the narrative. Comments under the video multiplied instantly. Some said it was just coincidence. Others argued that coincidences stacked on coincidences eventually stopped looking like coincidences. The internet wasn't looking for facts. It was looking for patterns. And this one, even if imaginary, felt too perfect for people to ignore. And the deeper people fell into this rabbit hole, the more they questioned the speed and scale of Erika's original Romania project. They wondered how a teenager managed to run an operation involving Marines, foreign orphanages, logistics across continents, and partnerships with organizations near military infrastructure. Supporters insisted this was simply a case of a motivated young woman with passion and connections doing meaningful humanitarian work. But critics argued that passion alone doesn't create global coordination. They asked what doors were opened behind the scenes, what networks were involved, and why none of that had ever been explained publicly. The conversation also expanded to the orphanage itself. Users pulled up its location on maps and pointed out how close it was to a NATO-affiliated base. Again, not inherently suspicious, Romania's infrastructure naturally places many institutions within overlapping areas. But online, proximity becomes symbolism. Someone even wrote, "You don't accidentally end up doing charity right next to a base known for sensitive activity." Supporters replied that orphans don't choose where they're housed and charities don't always control locations. But the tension between the two sides kept the debate alive. Searching for more, people began analyzing Romanian history, learning about old adoption scandals, orphanage abuses, and corruption within child welfare systems dating back to the 90s and early 2000s. None of this had anything to do with Erika's project, but the shadow of Romania's historical issues made even ordinary charity work seem suspicious to outsiders who didn't understand the context. Users merged unrelated timelines and assumed continuity where none existed. That's the danger of online research. Once people start investigating with a predetermined expectation, everything they find feels like confirmation. Then a new layer emerged. Someone posted an audio clip from a Romanian woman discussing foreign charities, claiming they sometimes engaged in business practices that didn't feel right. She threw out a number, 80,000 orphans taken out of the country, which many said was exaggerated or misinterpreted. But once again, accuracy was irrelevant. The clip triggered emotional reactions. It made people wonder whether foreign missions like Erika's fit into a larger, vague pattern of overlooked or misunderstood activity. And in comment sections, people kept repeating the same idea. How much did we miss because no one was paying attention back then? Other users raised questions about military movements. They claimed that around the time certain missing persons cases emerged in Romania, approximately 200 American soldiers reportedly left the region. Whether this was true, misunderstood, or entirely fabricated didn't stop it from being shared repeatedly. The rumor blended seamlessly with everything else: concerns about secrecy, gaps in records, unexplained rotations, and overlapping timelines. Little by little, every new piece, real, exaggerated, or completely unrelated, got folded into the growing mythology of the Erika Romania discussion. A story that had started as humanitarian work now felt like a labyrinth of loose threads, and unresolved questions. And all of it could be traced back to the same catalyst: Candace Owens' decision to speak indirectly, instead of clearly, Candace's silence afterward only made things worse. When someone with her influence chooses ambiguity, people assume intention. And because she didn't deny or clarify, her audience interpreted her words however they wanted. Her single post had opened a door, and her silence made sure it stayed open. The more unresolved the story felt, the louder people demanded answers. Supporters defended Erika, saying she was being unfairly dragged into unrelated historical issues. Critics said public figures don't get to remain silent when their past actions intersect with sensitive regions and institutions. And through it all, people kept coming back to the same central feeling. The Romania chapter didn't feel closed. It felt like a story stuck mid-sentence, with questions floating in the air that no one had ever bothered to address. And online, unfinished stories are the most dangerous ones. As the conversation reached its peak, something interesting happened. It stopped being about Erika herself and became about everything around her. The atmosphere, the timing, the unanswered questions, the names that kept reappearing in old clippings, the pieces that seemed unrelated until Candace's post made people look again. The internet wasn't chasing a villain, it was chasing a mystery. And mysteries, once opened, never close quietly. By this point, users had created dozens of timelines comparing Erika's Romania visits with regional military activity, local controversies, and foreign charity movements. None of these timelines were official. None were verified, but they were detailed, visual, and dramatic enough to capture millions of views. Some pointed to troop rotations. Others pointed to gaps in public records. Others drew arrows between orphanage locations, base activity, and specific dates. It didn't matter if any of it proved anything. Social media doesn't run on proof. It runs on patterns, and the most discussed pattern was this. The Romanian Angels project seemed to appear rapidly and disappear quietly. People kept asking the same question: how did something that large, that visible, that tied to military partnerships just end without explanation? Supporters said it was simple. The project ran its course. Many nonprofits shift focus, especially when run by young founders. Critics argued that silence rarely follows a mission that big unless something complicated happened. The silence became the story. Then someone pointed out that Erika herself hadn't addressed the rumors, hadn't commented on the resurfaced video, and hadn't acknowledged the rapidly spreading threads. Her social media remained quiet, her statements limited, and her public presence controlled. Supporters said she shouldn't have to acknowledge speculation. Critics said ignoring it only fueled more speculation. This tension created a vacuum, and the internet filled that vacuum with theories. Meanwhile, an old Romanian article was reposted again. One, describing how the translator believed files had been removed from her computer and how she feared retaliation. The article claimed she submitted an audio recording to prove her concerns. Again, none of this mentioned Erika, but the article referenced another name, Lloyd Sparks, someone who appeared in a photo next to Colonel Busher in a separate piece. Once more, no proof these individuals had any connection to Erika's activities. No official confirmation that these references were linked. But the fact that names overlapped across different documents made the internet spiral deeper. Someone even wrote, "Either this is the biggest coincidence in the world, or we've been blind for years." It became the quote people reposted everywhere, and then came an angle no one expected. The idea that Erika's Romania story might not be about her at all, but about the environment she stepped into. Romania's history with foreign charities, its complicated adoption legacy, its relationship with the US military, its sensitive political landscape. Suddenly, all of it became relevant. People argued that while Erika may have stepped into the region with good intentions, she might have unknowingly entered a place where locals already had concerns, distrust, and unanswered questions long before she arrived. That perspective shifted the tone. Some began saying that Erika wasn't the center of the story, the region was, that the mystery wasn't about her choices, but about everything around her that never got explained publicly. And that shift only made the narrative feel heavier. Like the Romania chapter was part of a much larger story that had never been fully told. During this time, someone shared a thread, claiming that after certain incidents became public years ago, around 200 American soldiers left Romania abruptly. Whether this was accurate, misreported, or fabricated didn't matter. The rumor spread rapidly. People began asking if the silent fate of Erika's project aligned with any of these rumored troop movements. There was no hard evidence either way, but the more questions surfaced, the less people cared about verification. They cared that no one was denying any of it. And once the idea took hold that something happened in Romania that no one talked about, the conversation snowballed even further. Candace's silence became another key element. She had sparked the conversation, intentionally or not, and then stepped back. No clarification, no correction, no denial. Her followers insisted she was being strategic. Her critics said she was being reckless. But regardless of intentions, silence from a loud voice feels like permission in the eyes of social media. People assumed she knew more than she could say. They assumed she was hinting at something deeper. They assumed she was hinting at something deeper. Assumed her post was a warning. Every assumption strengthened the mystery. People also noticed that Romanian locals in old videos often expressed confusion about foreign organizations operating in their communities. They described how groups came and went with little explanation, how communication felt limited, how information didn't always match. These clips, originally discussing broad issues, suddenly became part of the Erika conversation simply because they echoed the sense of confusion many felt now. The internet thrives on echo chambers, and this story had become one. Meanwhile, some users raised a troubling but unverified claim that Romania wouldn't allow Erika back into the country. Fact-checkers later noted no official evidence of such a ban exists. No public record confirming it, no government documentation supporting it. But the rumor persisted anyway. The idea that a country might reject someone who once ran a charity there was dramatic enough to overshadow the lack of evidence. And when rumors feel dramatic, they spread faster than facts. By now, it wasn't just threads or videos. Full podcasts, reaction channels, political commentators, and gossip pages were covering the Romania story. More people joined the discussion every hour, each adding their own interpretation. Some said Erika was being unfairly targeted because of her political associations. Others insisted the public had a right to ask questions. Others argued Candace had intentionally set all of this in motion. But the truth was simpler. The internet loves a mystery, especially one that sits at the intersection of charity, politics, faith, foreign countries, military presence, and vague time. And Erika's Romanian Angels project, intentionally or not, had become the perfect storm of all these elements. People didn't necessarily believe Erika did anything wrong. What they believed was that too many things surrounding her story felt unresolved. Too many gaps, too many coincidences, too many unanswered questions. And unanswered questions are the foundation of every viral online obsession. So, by the time part of the story resurfaced again, the orphanage visits, the military partnership, the sudden disappearance of the project, the credit thanking Colonel Busher, the narrative was no longer about what happened. It was about what wasn't said, and nothing fuels the internet more than silence. If there's one thing this entire situation proves, it's that stories don't disappear just because time passes. Sometimes all it takes is one post, one hint, one moment of silence, and suddenly people start seeing connections they never noticed before. And right now, the questions around this Romania chapter are louder than they've been in years. So now I want to hear from you. Do you think the internet is simply overreacting, connecting random dots because the timing feels suspicious? Or do you think Candace's words weren't just commentary, but a quiet signal that there's more beneath the surface? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because honestly, the theories are getting wilder by the hour, and your take might be the piece everyone's missing. If you want more deep dives into stories that other channels stay far away from, make sure you hit like, subscribe, and turn on that bell. Whenever a new clue drops, a new clip resurfaces, or someone finally breaks their silence, we'll be right here breaking it all down. Stay tuned. This one feels far from over.